My phone rang at 2:47 a.m. and I knew before I answered, something had gone terribly wrong. Dad. Adrian's voice cracked through the speaker, raw with panic. She went into the basement. God, Dad, she went into the basement and I couldn't stop her. My blood turned to ice. The one rule. The only rule that mattered in my entire house, and he'd let her break it. What do you mean you couldn't stop her? I gripped the hotel phone so hard my knuckles went white. Adrian, tell me exactly what happened. But before I tell you what my son said next, you need to understand something. That basement wasn't just a room. It was the line between everything I'd built and everyone who'd ever wanted to take it from me. And the woman who'd just crossed that line? She'd been circling like a vulture since the day I met her. My name is Conrad Halstead. I'm 63 years old and I've spent 4 decades building an empire from dirt and sweat. Started with nothing but calloused hands and a father who died choking on factory smoke before he turned 50. Watched my mother scrub rich people's floors until her knees gave out. I swore I'd never be poor again and I kept that promise. Built a timber business that grew into land development, then investments, then wealth most people only dream about. But money doesn't make you safe. It makes you a target. And the people closest to you? They're the ones who know exactly where to aim. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. That's why I had one simple rule. Nobody enters the basement. Not friends stopping by for drinks. Not contractors doing repairs. Not even Adrian, my only son, my only child. 40 years that rule stood, solid as the steel door I'd installed. People thought I was paranoid. Maybe hiding gold bars or illegal documents down there. Let them think whatever they wanted. The truth was simpler and more valuable than any amount of money. Down in that basement, wrapped in protective covers and locked in fireproof containers, were the original deeds to everything I owned. Land titles spanning 3 states. Business contracts worth millions. Documentation that proved ownership of warehouses, properties, investments that took a lifetime to accumulate. One fire, one flood, one greedy person with a camera phone, and decades of work could vanish. But worse than the business papers were the personal things. My late wife's letters, written in her elegant handwriting during our courtship. Her wedding dress, preserved exactly as she wore it the day she became mine. Photographs nobody else had copies of. Her laugh, her smile, moments that existed nowhere else in the world. She'd been gone 8 years, taken by cancer that ate through her too fast for medicine to fight. Everything I had left of her lived in that basement. So when I said nobody enters, I meant it. That wasn't control. That was survival. Adrian grew up with everything I never had. Private schools where tuition cost more than my father earned in 5 years. Summer trips to Europe. A trust fund waiting for him at 25. I gave him opportunities that should have made him strong, sharp, ready to protect what we'd built. Instead, privilege made him soft. He trusted too easily. Believed every smile was genuine, every compliment was honest. When he brought Cassandra home 2 years ago, I saw through her in about 30 seconds. But Adrian? He was already drowning and he thought the water was love. Met her at a charity gala, he told me. She wore a red dress that cost more than she should have been able to afford on her receptionist's salary. Laughed loud, drank too much expensive wine, and steered every conversation toward money like a compass pointing north. Mr. Halstead, she purred at that first dinner, swirling her wine glass. Adrian tells me you're quite the businessman. What's your estate worth these days? Adrian had flushed red, embarrassed. But not angry. Not defensive. Just weak. I watched her eyes when she thought nobody was looking. Saw how they lingered on the artwork, calculated the value of the chandelier, measured the size of the house like she was already planning where to put her furniture. She wasn't looking at Adrian like a woman in love. She was looking at him like a key to a vault. Would you trust your son's judgment if you saw him falling for someone like this? Or would you step in even knowing it might push him away? Drop your answer in the comments. I tried warning him. Sat him down 3 weeks before the wedding man to man. Son, you can marry whoever you want. But don't be blind. That woman isn't here for your heart. He'd stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. You've been alone too long, Dad. You think everyone's out to get you just because you had to fight for everything. Cassandra loves me. You're just jealous I'm happy. Jealous? The word had hit like a slap. My own son thought I begrudged him happiness because I'd learned to see predators for what they were. But I didn't argue. Arguing with a man who's already made up his mind is like shouting at the ocean. So I did the only thing I could. I prepared. The week before their wedding, I installed a new lock on the basement door. Not just any lock. Military-grade steel, reinforced frame, electronic keypad with a code only I knew. Cost me $12,000. Adrian noticed, asked what it was for. Just an upgrade, I'd said. Security. He'd rolled his eyes but didn't push. Probably thought it was just another example of his paranoid old father protecting things that didn't need protecting. After the wedding, Cassandra moved into my house with Adrian. They talked about getting their own place, but she convinced him it made more sense to stay. Why waste money on rent when your father has this huge house? Besides, someone should be here to help him as he gets older. Help me. Right. What she really wanted was access. And she started pushing for it immediately. Found her in my study one afternoon, rifling through the desk drawers. She jumped when I walked in, all innocent smiles. Just looking for a pen, Mr. Halstead. Hope you don't mind. I minded. But I smiled back and handed her a pen from my pocket. Here. Now you don't need to search. She'd laughed, but her eyes stayed cold. Then came the questions about the basement. Casual at first. What do you keep down there, Mr. Halstead? Must be something important with that fancy new lock. Family things, I'd say. Nothing interesting. But she kept circling back to it. Like a shark that smelled blood but can't quite locate the source. I'd catch her standing in front of that steel door sometimes, just staring at it. Thinking. Planning. Adrian didn't see it. Or didn't want to. Every time I tried to point out her behavior, he'd defend her. She's just curious, Dad. You're being paranoid again. Maybe I was paranoid. But 40 years of business had taught me, the paranoid ones are the ones who stay rich. Then came the business trip I couldn't avoid. Negotiations for expansion into 3 new cities, contracts worth millions, meetings that had been scheduled for months. I tried to postpone, feeling uneasy about leaving them alone in the house. But my partners wouldn't budge, and missing these meetings would have cost more than I could afford. The morning I left, I'd stood in front of that basement door one last time. Adrian watched me, impatient to drive me to the airport. Remember, I'd said, this door stays locked. Always. I know, Dad. You've only told me about 1,000 times. Then make it 1,001. Nobody opens this door. Not for any reason. Understood. He'd nodded, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Resentment, maybe. Or exhaustion at having an old man repeat the same rule over and over. I should have canceled the trip right then. Because 2 days later, at 2:47 a.m. in a hotel room 600 miles from home, my phone rang with Adrian's panicked voice telling me the one thing I'd spent 40 years preventing. She called a locksmith, Adrian was saying, words tumbling out fast. Said it was her house too now, that she had a right to know what was hidden down there. I tried to argue, Dad, I swear I did. But I had to run errands, and when I got back, the door was open. She's down there right now. She's been down there for over an hour. And that's when I realized the worst part. Adrian wasn't calling me immediately when it happened. He'd waited. Let her have time alone with everything I'd protected for 4 decades. My son hadn't just failed to stop her. Part of him had let her do it. Stay where you are, I said, voice deadly calm. Don't touch anything. Don't let her take anything out of that basement. I'm catching the next flight home. But even as I said it, I knew. Whatever damage Cassandra had planned to do, she'd already started. What would you do if someone you warned your child about betrayed your trust like this? Would you forgive your son for his weakness or cut him off completely? Let me know in the comments below. The flight home was 5 hours of hell. Couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. Just kept picturing Cassandra's hands on my wife's letters, her eyes scanning through documents that represented my entire life's work. Every business deal I'd clawed my way through. Every property I'd bought when people said I was crazy. Every risk I'd taken that had paid off against all odds. But more than that, I kept seeing Sarah's wedding dress in my mind. The way she'd looked in it 36 years ago, standing at the altar with tears in her eyes and a smile that promised forever. We'd gotten 28 years before cancer stole her. 28 years that had to carry me through however many I had left. And now some woman who'd known my son for less than 2 years had her hands all over those memories. I'd built my empire from nothing. Literally nothing. My father, Thomas Halstead, died at 49 years old. Lungs destroyed by chemical dust in the factory where he worked 14-hour shifts. Came home every night coughing, wheezing, face gray with exhaustion. My mother would make him dinner, then leave at midnight to clean office buildings downtown. She'd come back at 6 in the morning, sleep 2 hours, then start washing clothes for rich families who paid her $3 an hour. I was 17 when my father died. Stood at his funeral in a borrowed suit, listening to his co-workers talk about what a hard worker he'd been. What a loyal employee. Like loyalty to a company that worked you to death was something to be proud of. Made me a promise right there at his grave. I'd never be poor again. Never let poverty chain me the way it chained him. Never die with nothing to show for a lifetime of sweat except a cheap casket and a widow who'd have to keep scrubbing floors just to survive. Started working construction the day after the funeral. Lied about my age, said I was 18. Spent 3 years learning everything about building, foundations, framing, roofing, electrical, plumbing. Worked every hour I could, saved every dollar I didn't absolutely need to spend. By 20, I had enough money to buy my first piece of land. 3 acres of nothing, way outside town where nobody wanted to live. People laughed. Said I'd wasted my money on dirt that would never be worth anything. 5 years later, the city expanded. Suddenly my worthless dirt was prime real estate. Sold it for 8 times what I'd paid. Took that money and bought timber rights to a forest everyone said was too remote to harvest profitably. Figured out a way to make it work anyway. That's how you build wealth. You see what other people are too scared or too comfortable to see. You take risks when everyone's telling you to play it safe. You work while they sleep. You sacrifice while they spend. By 30, I owned 4 properties and a small timber operation. By 40, I'd expanded into land development, buying cheap land and turning it into subdivisions. By 50, I had investments across 3 states and more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. But money doesn't make you happy. It just makes you comfortable while you're miserable. I'd learned that the hard way after Sarah died. Woke up in a huge house filled with expensive furniture, bank accounts that could buy anything I wanted, and nobody to share it with except a son who'd grown distant over the years. Adrian had been 12 when his mother got sick. Watched her fade over 18 months, watched me try to buy her health with the best doctors, the most expensive treatments, experimental procedures that insurance wouldn't cover. None of it mattered. Cancer didn't care how much money you had. He pulled away after she died. Stopped talking to me about anything important. We existed in the same house like strangers who happened to share a last name. I threw myself into work and he threw himself into school, then college, then whatever life he was building that didn't include me. Maybe that's why I kept the basement locked so tight. It was the only place where Sarah still existed exactly as I remembered her. Where I could go down and read her letters, touch her dress, look at photos of us before cancer and grief changed everything. The basement was my sanctuary. My fortress against a world that had taken the only person I'd ever truly loved. And Cassandra had violated it. Plane finally landed at 6:15 a.m. I didn't wait for luggage, just grabbed my carry-on and headed straight to the car service I'd arranged. Gave the driver my address and an extra $100 to speed. Got home at 7:32 a.m. House looked normal from outside. Quiet. Peaceful. Like nothing had been destroyed inside. I used my key, walked in. Found Adrian in the kitchen, looking like he hadn't slept. Eyes red, hair messy, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Where is she? I asked. Upstairs. Sleeping. He wouldn't meet my eyes. And the basement? He flinched. I locked it back up after she came out. Dad, I'm sorry. I tried to. Show me what she took. She didn't take anything. Just looked. Took some pictures with her phone, but... My stomach dropped. Pictures? Of course. Why steal documents when you can photograph them? Copy deeds, titles, business contracts. Have all the information without leaving evidence of theft. I walked past Adrian without another word. Headed straight for the basement door. The new lock I'd installed had scratches around it where the locksmith had worked. The electronic keypad screen was cracked, probably from tools trying to bypass it. But they'd gotten through. My $12,000 military-grade security, defeated by a locksmith and a woman's determination to get what wasn't hers. I punched in my code. The lock clicked. Door swung open. The smell hit me first. Sarah's perfume, the one I'd kept in a sealed container with her dress. Someone had opened it, and now that scent, the one I saved for the rare moments when I needed to feel close to her, filled the entire basement. Descended the stairs slowly. Lights were already on. Someone had left them on all night. The storage room looked like a tornado had hit it. Filing cabinets stood open, folders pulled out and stacked haphazardly. The fireproof safe I'd kept on the back shelf sat on the floor, open. Combination lock defeated somehow. But the worst part was the table in the center of the room. My wife's memory box sat there, lid off, contents spilled across the surface. Letters unfolded. Photographs scattered. Her wedding dress pulled halfway out of its preservation bag. Cassandra had gone through everything. Every private moment, every personal document, every piece of my life I'd kept sacred. My hands started shaking. Rage built in my chest so intense I could barely breathe. Footsteps on the stairs behind me. Adrian probably. Coming to apologize again, to make excuses for the woman he'd chosen over his own father's trust. But when I turned around, it wasn't Adrian. Cassandra stood there, dressed in one of her expensive outfits, makeup perfect like she was heading to brunch instead of facing the man whose life she just ransacked. "Mr. Halstead," she said, voice smooth as poison. "We need to talk about transparency in this family. Have you ever wanted to protect something so badly that you'd sacrifice a relationship for it? Share your thoughts below." Transparency. The word came out of her mouth like she had any right to use it. "Get out of my basement," I said quietly. "Actually, I think we should discuss what I found down here. Some very interesting documents. Property deeds, business contracts, investment records. Things that Adrian should have known about a long time ago. He knows everything he needs to know." She smiled. "Cold. Calculating. Does he? Because from what I saw, you've been keeping him in the dark about his own inheritance. That doesn't seem fair, does it? He's your only son. Your only heir. These assets will all be his someday. Doesn't he have a right to know what that means?" "What he has," I said, taking a step toward her, "is a father who built everything from nothing so he'd never struggle the way his grandfather did. What he doesn't have is a wife who respects boundaries." "Boundaries?" She laughed. "You mean secrets? You've turned this basement into a shrine to paranoia. Adrian told me how you've been like this his whole life. Never trusting anyone, never sharing information, always assuming everyone's out to steal from you. And yet here you are," I said, "breaking into the one place I asked you never to enter. Photographing documents that don't belong to you. Proving exactly why I don't trust people." She didn't even have the grace to look ashamed. Just crossed her arms, defiant. "I'm part of this family now. That means I have a right to know what I married into. What Adrian stands to inherit. You can't keep us in the dark forever." "Us." I let the word hang there. "You mean you?" "Adrian never asked about the basement. Never demanded to see financial records. That's all you, Cassandra. Because he's too passive to stand up to you. Someone has to look out for his interests." "His interests," I repeated. "Right. Not yours." Her mask slipped for just a second. Flash of anger in her eyes. Then she controlled it, smiled again. "They're the same thing now. We're married. What's his is mine, and what's yours will eventually be ours." There it was. The truth she'd been dancing around since the day I met her. She wasn't here for Adrian's heart. She was here for Adrian's inheritance. And she'd just shown her hand completely. Behind her, Adrian appeared at the top of the stairs. Heard enough of the conversation to look sick. "Cassandra," he said weakly, "maybe we should." "No." She cut him off. "Your father and I are having an important discussion about family finances. About transparency. About the fact that you deserve to know what you're inheriting." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Saw the confusion in his eyes. The conflict. Part of him knew his wife had gone too far. But part of him, the part that had always felt shut out of my world, wanted to hear what she was saying. That's when I understood. Cassandra hadn't just violated my privacy. She'd found the crack in my relationship with Adrian and driven a wedge straight through it. "You're right," I said suddenly. Both of them looked surprised. Adrian should know about his inheritance. Cassandra's smile widened. "Victorious. So let me tell you, son. Everything you see in this basement, the deeds, the contracts, the documentation of 40 years of work, they're yours. When I die, all of it becomes yours. Every property, every investment, every dollar I've saved." Adrian shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, I don't want to talk about." "But," I continued, looking directly at Cassandra, "that inheritance comes with a responsibility. The responsibility to protect what I built. To respect the sacrifices that created it. To honor the memory of the woman who stood beside me through the hardest years." I moved to the table, carefully gathering Sarah's letters, gently folding them back into their envelopes. "Your mother and I built this empire together. She died before she could enjoy it, but everything I did after she passed, I did with her memory guiding me. This basement isn't paranoia, Adrian. It's reverence." Picked up the photograph on top. Sarah in her wedding dress, laughing at something I'd said. God, she was beautiful. "When you're ready to take over," I said softly, "when you're ready to carry this responsibility with the respect it deserves, everything here is yours. But not before. And not because your wife broke into my sanctuary with a locksmith and a camera phone." Cassandra's smile had vanished. "So what now? You punish Adrian because I wanted transparency?" "No," I said. "I teach both of you what happens when trust is broken. And that's when I made the decision that would change everything. A decision that would either save my son or destroy whatever relationship we had left. Would you give someone a second chance after they violated your most sacred space? Tell me in the comments. I didn't speak to either of them for 3 days. Moved into the guest house on the far end of my property. Small place I'd built years ago for visitors who never came. 2 rooms, basic furniture. Enough space to think without seeing Adrian's guilty face or Cassandra's triumphant smirk. Spent those days making phone calls. To my lawyer, Marcus Reynolds, who'd been handling my affairs for 20 years. To my accountant. To the property management company that handled my real estate portfolio. To people I trusted, which was a very short list. By day 4 I had a plan. Adrian knocked on the guest house door around noon. I'd been expecting him. Opened it to find him standing there looking like he hadn't eaten or slept properly since I'd left the main house. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside, let him in. He sat on the couch, hands clasped between his knees, head down. The posture of a child waiting for punishment. "I know you're angry," he started. "Angry doesn't begin to cover it, son. I should have stopped her. Should have called the police when she hired that locksmith. But she said." He trailed off. "Said what?" He looked up, eyes red. "Said if I really loved her, I wouldn't let you keep secrets from us. Said healthy marriages don't have locked rooms and hidden information. That you were being controlling and manipulative, and if I didn't stand up to you now, I'd be under your thumb forever." There it was. The poison she'd been dripping in his ear, probably since the day they met. Turning natural boundaries into control. Making my protection of private family matters into some kind of abuse. "And you believed her," I said. I didn't know what to believe. She made it sound so reasonable. Like we were partners and you were treating me like a child. Like I should have access to information about my own future. "Did she mention that your future was never in question? That I've told you 100 times everything I have will be yours someday? She said you might change your mind. That without knowing what you have, I couldn't protect my interests if you decided to cut me off or leave everything to charity or what?" I leaned forward. "Marry some gold digger and give it all to her instead? Is that what she suggested?" He didn't answer. Didn't need to. His silence confirmed everything. I sighed, rubbed my face. "Adrian, let me ask you something. When did you stop trusting me?" "I do trust you." "No, you don't. If you trusted me, you would have believed me when I told you Cassandra was trouble. You would have respected the one boundary I asked you to respect in this entire house. You would have called me the second she hired that locksmith instead of waiting until after she'd already gone through everything." "I was scared," he admitted quietly. "Of what?" "Of choosing between you and her. She said I had to pick a side. Either I was her husband, her partner, her family, or I was your son, your employee, your property. She said I couldn't be both. Smart woman, I had to admit. Evil but smart. She'd framed the situation so that any loyalty to me looked like betrayal to her. Classic manipulation. And you picked her," I said. "I love her." Those 3 words hit me harder than I expected. Because they were true. I could see it in his face. Whatever Cassandra was, whatever her motives, Adrian genuinely loved her. Or loved who he thought she was. That made everything more complicated. "Son," I said carefully, "I'm going to tell you something and I need you to really hear it. Can you do that?" He nodded. "Love is important. It's valuable. It's necessary for a good life. But love without wisdom is dangerous. Love can make you ignore red flags. Make you justify behavior you'd never accept from anyone else. Make you sacrifice things you should protect. You think I'm stupid for loving her. I think you're human. I loved your mother with everything I had. Still do. But your mother never asked me to choose between her and my principles. Never made me feel guilty for having boundaries. Never treated my life's work like something I was hiding from her. Cassandra says." "I know what Cassandra says," I interrupted. "She's been saying it since the day I met her. But words are cheap, Adrian. Actions are what matter. And her actions have shown me exactly who she is." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "So what happens now?" "I've been thinking about that for 3 days. Had several options. Could cut him off completely, rewrite my will, leave everything to charity or some distant relatives I barely knew. Could make him choose between his inheritance and his wife. Could kick them both out and let them figure out life without my money cushioning every fall. But none of those options would teach him anything. They'd just make him bitter and push him further into Cassandra's arms. She'd comfort him, tell him I was a cruel old man, convince him they were victims of my tyranny. No, I needed a different approach. "I'm going to give you both what you asked for," I said. He looked confused. "What do you mean?" You want transparency about the family finances? You want access to information about your inheritance? Fine. You'll get it. I'm arranging a meeting with my lawyer and accountant next week. We'll go through everything. Every property, every investment, every dollar in every account. His eyes widened. Really? Really? Cassandra said you deserve to know what you're inheriting. I agree. You're 28 years old. Old enough to understand the scope of what you'll be responsible for someday. Dad, thank you. But, I held up a hand, there are conditions. Of course there were. You should have expected that. First, Cassandra doesn't attend the meeting. This is between you, me, and my advisors. She can know whatever you decide to tell her afterward, but I won't have her in the room asking questions and making demands. He started to protest, but I cut him off. Second, you're going to spend the next 6 months learning what it actually takes to maintain this estate. That means working with my property managers, sitting in on business meetings, understanding how investments work, learning the legal complexities of what you'll inherit. No more living here like a guest. You want to be treated like an heir? Act like one. Okay, he said slowly. That's fair. Third, and most important, you move into the guest house with me for those 6 months. What? Why? Because right now, your wife has more influence over you than your own judgment. You need distance. Time to think without her in your ear every night, spinning everything I say into manipulation. She's my wife. I can't just leave her for 6 months. You can, I said firmly. Married couples live apart for work reasons all the time. Military deployments, business travel, education. 6 months is nothing. She'll never agree to that. Then I guess you'll have to choose, I said. What matters more, learning to manage your inheritance responsibly or keeping your wife happy? It was the same choice Cassandra had forced on him, just from the other direction. And I knew it wasn't fair. But fairness went out the window the moment she broke into my basement. Adrian sat there torn. I could see the war happening behind his eyes. The boy who wanted his father's approval fighting the man who'd promised to put his wife first. Think about it, I said. You've got until tomorrow to decide. But Adrian, understand this. If you choose to stay in that house with her, if you let her keep poisoning your judgment, I will protect my assets the only way I can. I'll start moving everything into trusts and structures that she can't touch. You'll still inherit, but it'll be locked up so tight that no divorce lawyer in the world could get to it. You think we're going to get divorced? I looked at him sadly. Son, I think she's going to try to take everything long before death gives her the chance. He left without saying yes or no. I watched him walk back to the main house, shoulders slumped, feet dragging. A man caught between two worlds. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Cassandra. What you're doing to Adrian is cruel and manipulative. He's your son, not your property. If you try to turn him against me, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. I stared at that message for a long time. The threat was clear. She'd start spreading lies probably. Paint me as an abusive father, a controlling monster, whatever narrative served her purposes. But threats only work if you're afraid of them. I texted back, my son is my legacy, and I will protect him from anyone who tries to exploit him. Even his wife. Especially his wife. She didn't respond. But I knew the war was officially on. The next morning, Adrian showed up at the guest house with a suitcase. 6 months, he said. I'll do it. Relief washed over me. Good. Smart choice. Cassandra's furious. Says you're driving a wedge between us. That this is just another way of controlling my life. What do you think? He set his suitcase down, met my eyes. I think I need to figure out what I think. Without anyone telling me what to believe. That was the most mature thing I'd heard him say in years. Come on, I said. Let's get you settled. Then we'll start going through the basics of estate management. You've got a lot to learn. As we walked into the guest house, I glanced back at the main building. Saw a figure in an upstairs window. Cassandra watching us. Even from a distance, I could feel her anger radiating outward. She'd lost this round. But the game was far from over. Because I hadn't told Adrian everything. Hadn't mentioned that those documents she photographed in the basement? Half of them were outdated. Some were decoys I'd planted years ago. And the real wealth, the true core of everything I'd built? It was hidden somewhere she'd never think to look. Have you ever had to create distance from someone to protect a relationship? Share your story below. The first week with Adrian in the guest house was tense. He'd disappear for hours at a time, probably sneaking back to see Cassandra when he thought I wouldn't notice. I noticed, but I didn't comment. Part of this lesson was letting him figure things out on his own. Meanwhile, I started his education. Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp, I had him sitting at the small kitchen table with coffee and a stack of folders. "This," I said, dropping the first folder in front of him, "is the Warren Street property. 12 residential units, commercial space on the ground floor. Tell me what you see." He opened the folder, scanned the documents. "Rental agreements, maintenance records, tax documents?" And he flipped through more pages. "Looks profitable. Monthly rent minus expenses leaves about $8,000 in positive cash flow. Good. Now explain to me why I bought that property in 2003 when everyone said the neighborhood was dying." He stared at the papers like they'd suddenly reveal the answer. "I don't know. Good location. Location was terrible back then. Crime was high, businesses were fleeing, property values were dropping. But I saw 3 things nobody else saw." I pointed to a map in the folder. "First, the city had quietly approved plans for a new light rail station 4 blocks away. Wouldn't break ground for another 5 years, but I knew it was coming. Second, 2 tech companies had just leased office space half a mile west. That meant young professionals would be moving to the area. Third, the property itself was structurally sound. Just needed cosmetic work." "So you bought low and waited." "I bought smart and planned. There's a difference. Anyone can buy cheap property and hope it appreciates. I bought property where I could see the future others missed." Over the next 2 weeks, we went through every major investment I'd made. The timber rights I'd purchased in 1987. The warehouse conversion in 2010. The land deals that had made me my first million. Each one had a story, a strategy, a reason beyond just making money. Adrian was smart. He caught on faster than I expected. Started asking good questions. Challenged some of my decisions, which I actually appreciated. Showed he was thinking critically instead of just nodding along. But every evening I'd see him on his phone. Texting with Cassandra, no doubt. And every few days his mood would darken. She was working on him from a distance, I could tell. Thursday of week 3, I found him sitting outside at midnight, staring at nothing. "Talk to me," I said, sitting down beside him. "Cassandra says I'm betraying her. That every day I spend here learning from you is a day I'm choosing your side over hers. What do you think?" "I think..." He paused, struggling. "I think I'm trying to understand the responsibility I'll have someday. That's not betrayal. That's preparation." "Good answer. But she doesn't see it that way. She says you're brainwashing me. Turning me against her. Making me believe she's the enemy when really, you're just a controlling old man who can't let go." I nodded slowly. "She's half right." He looked at me surprised. "I am trying to control something," I admitted. "But not you. I'm trying to control who gets access to 40 years of my life's work. That's not the same as controlling you as a person." She says there's no difference. Of course she does. Because if you believe that, then protecting my legacy looks like abuse. And if it looks like abuse, you'll feel guilty for being here. And if you feel guilty, you'll run back to her to make it stop. He was quiet, absorbing that. "Adrian, let me ask you something. Before you met Cassandra, did you ever feel like I was controlling your life?" He thought about it. "No. You were distant, maybe. After Mom died, we didn't talk much. But you never told me what to do with my life. Never pressured me about career choices or who to date or where to live." "Exactly. The only thing I've ever been protective about is this estate. The work I built. The legacy I'll leave behind. That's not about controlling you. That's about making sure decades of sacrifice don't get destroyed by someone who didn't earn it." "She did earn it though," he said quietly. "By marrying me." "Is that what she tells you? That marriage is transactional? That saying I do means she's entitled to everything I worked for? Isn't that how marriage works? 2 people become one, share everything. In a real marriage, yes. But real marriages are built on love, respect, partnership. They're not business arrangements where one person gains access to another person's family wealth." He didn't respond. I could see the conflict written all over his face. "Tell me something," I continued. "If I were broke, if I had nothing but this house and a modest pension, do you think Cassandra would have married you?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "I want to believe she would have," he finally said. "But honestly, I don't know anymore." That admission was progress. Small but real. Week 4, I introduced him to Marcus Reynolds, my lawyer. Marcus was 67, sharp as broken glass, and had seen every kind of family dispute imaginable in his 4 decades practicing law. We met in Marcus's downtown office. Adrian sat across from us while Marcus laid out the structure of my estate. "Your father has been very smart about asset protection," Marcus began. Most of his wealth is held in various trusts, LLCs, and corporate structures. Some for tax purposes, some for liability protection, some specifically to prevent marital claims. Adrian frowned. Marital claims? If you were to divorce, Marcus explained, certain assets would be considered separate property because they were acquired before marriage and held in specific structures. Other assets might be considered community property depending on how they're managed during the marriage. I'm not planning to divorce. Marcus smiled slightly. Nobody plans to divorce, son. But 50% of marriages end that way. Your father has spent decades building these protections because he's seen what happens when wealth meets divorce court. He thinks Cassandra is going to divorce me and take everything. I think, I corrected, that it's foolish to leave that possibility unprotected. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Marcus pulled out another folder. Now here's where it gets interesting. The documents your wife photographed in the basement. She shouldn't have done that, Adrian interrupted. I know. I'm sorry. The documents she photographed, Marcus continued, are largely obsolete. Property deeds that have been superseded by new structures. Business contracts that expired years ago. Financial records that show assets that have since been moved or sold. Adrian looked confused. So why keep them? I smiled. Insurance. Anyone who breaks into my basement and thinks they've discovered the map to my treasure is going to waste a lot of time chasing dead ends. You mean, you planned for someone to break in? I planned for the possibility. And I made sure that if it happened, they'd find exactly what I wanted them to find. Understanding dawned on his face. Then concern. Has Cassandra been using those documents for something? Marcus and I exchanged glances. Your wife has reached out to 3 different attorneys in the past 2 weeks, Marcus said. Shopping for someone who'll help her establish legal claims to your future inheritance. The color drained from Adrian's face. What? She's been very careful, Marcus continued. Hasn't filed anything official yet. But she's asking questions about spousal rights, inheritance law, how to protect her interests if your father tries to disinherit you or leave assets to others. But we're married. I'm his only son. Why would she need lawyers for that? Because, I said gently, she's not thinking about our relationship. She's thinking about how to guarantee she gets money whether we maintain a good relationship or not. Adrian stood up abruptly, walked to the window. His hands were shaking. She told me she was meeting with a financial advisor, he said quietly. Said she wanted to understand money management better so we could be smart about our future. She lied, Marcus said simply. She's been meeting with divorce attorneys and estate litigation specialists. The room went silent. I watched my son process this betrayal, saw his world cracking in real time. Why, he finally asked. Why would she be planning for divorce when we just got married? She's not planning for divorce, I said. She's planning for profit. Whether that comes from staying married to you until I die, or divorcing you with the best settlement possible, or finding some other angle, she's making sure she wins no matter what happens. He turned to face us, tears in his eyes. I love her. I know, son. I wanted to believe you were wrong about her. That you were just being paranoid and controlling. That she really did love me. Maybe she does, I offered, though I didn't believe it. People are complicated. She can love you and still be motivated by money. He shook his head. No. If she loved me, she wouldn't be meeting with lawyers behind my back. She wouldn't be photographing your documents. She wouldn't be. He trailed off. Wouldn't be what? He hesitated, then spoke. 2 nights ago when I went back to see her, I heard her on the phone, talking to someone, saying she just needed to wait it out. That you were old, that it wouldn't be much longer, and then everything would be ours. But the way she said ours, it didn't sound like she meant me and her. My blood went cold. Who was she talking to? I don't know. She hung up when she saw me. Said it was just a friend. Marcus made a note. I'll have my investigator look into her communications. Discreetly. Adrian slumped back into his chair. What do I do now? That was the question, wasn't it? He'd spent a month learning about the estate, understanding the responsibility he'd inherit. He'd started to see through Cassandra's manipulation. But he was still married to her, still legally bound. You have choices, I said. You can confront her, try to work it out. You can file for divorce now before things get more complicated. Or you can wait, gather more information, see what she does next. What would you do? I thought about Sarah. About how she'd stood by me through every hard decision, every risk, every failure and success. About how marriage was supposed to be partnership, not warfare. I'd protect myself, I said honestly. Document everything. Keep emotional distance. And I'd make sure she couldn't hurt me any more than she already has. Adrian nodded slowly. Can I stay here longer? Beyond the 6 months. You can stay as long as you need. I'm not ready to go back there. To that house. To her. Then don't. He looked younger suddenly. Vulnerable. Like the boy who used to come to me with scraped knees and hurt feelings, back before life got complicated. I'm sorry, Dad. For not listening. For letting her in. For the basement. For all of it. I stood up, walked over to him, put my hand on his shoulder. You loved someone. That's not a crime. But now you know better. Now you see who she really is. What if I'm wrong? What if Marcus's investigator finds out she really was just talking to a financial advisor? What if I'm about to destroy my marriage over paranoia? Then we'll deal with that, I said. But son, in 40 years of business, I've learned to trust my gut. And my gut says you're not wrong about her. We left Marcus's office that afternoon with a plan. Keep Adrian in the guest house. Monitor Cassandra's activities. Document every contact with attorneys. And wait for her to make her next move. Because she would. Women like Cassandra always did. That evening my phone rang. Unknown number again. Mr. Halstead, this is Cassandra. We need to talk about what you're doing to my husband. I'm not doing anything to your husband. I'm teaching him about his inheritance. You're turning him against me. Filling his head with lies about my character. I haven't told him anything that isn't true. If you feel like he's turning against you, maybe ask yourself why. Silence. Then, I know what you think of me. You've made it very clear. But Adrian loves me, and eventually he'll see that you're the problem, not me. Maybe. Or maybe he'll see that you hired lawyers before he even understood what marriage meant. Sharp intake of breath. He told you. He tells me everything now. That's what happens when you stop lying to someone, they start trusting you again. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you can protect your precious fortune forever? I'll find a way. I always find a way. I'm sure you will try, I said calmly. But you're playing a game I've been winning for 40 years. You broke into my basement thinking you'd found the keys to the kingdom. All you found was exactly what I wanted you to find. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're not as clever as you think you are, Cassandra. And you just showed your hand to the one person who could have protected you from me. I hung up before she could respond. Adrian was standing in the doorway, face pale. She called you? Just now. Angry that you're seeing through her. What did she say? That she always finds a way. I looked at him seriously. Son, I need you to understand something. This woman is not going to give up quietly. She's going to fight for every dollar she thinks she can get. And it's going to get ugly. I know. Are you ready for that? 4 divorce lawyers and accusations and possibly years of legal battles. He thought about it for a long moment. Then straightened his shoulders, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Strength. Real strength, not the borrowed confidence Cassandra had given him. I'm ready, he said. Teach me everything. How to protect the estate, how to see through manipulation, how to be the kind of man Mom would have been proud of. Because I'm done being weak. And in that moment, I knew. My son was finally becoming the man I'd always hoped he'd be. But Cassandra wasn't finished with us yet. Would you fight to save your child's marriage, or help them escape it? Let me know what you think. Week 5 was when everything escalated. Adrian filed for legal separation on Monday morning. Not divorce yet. Marcus advised starting with separation to establish boundaries and give Adrian time to think clearly. The papers were served to Cassandra at the main house that afternoon. I wasn't there, but Adrian told me what happened. She'd screamed. Thrown the documents across the room. Called him weak, spineless, a puppet dancing on his father's strings. Told him he was making the biggest mistake of his life. That he'd regret this. That she'd make sure he regretted it. Then she'd switch tactics. Crying, begging, promising to change. Saying she'd been scared about their future, that's why she'd talked to lawyers. That she'd only gone into the basement because she wanted to feel closer to him, to understand his family history. That she loved him and couldn't believe he'd throw away their marriage over his father's paranoia. Adrian had stood firm. Told her to read the separation agreement, get her own lawyer, and that they'd communicate through attorneys from now on. She'd slapped him. Hard enough to leave a red mark on his face that lasted for hours. I should have seen it coming, he said that night, holding ice to his cheek. The violence. People who manipulate always escalate when they lose control. Did you call the police? No. I just left. Maybe I should have. Document it, I said. Take photos of the mark. Write down exactly what happened. You'll need evidence if this gets worse. It got worse. Tuesday morning, my phone started ringing. Business partners, friends I hadn't talked to in years, even my accountant. All asking variations of the same question. Is it true you're abusing your daughter-in-law? Cutting her off from Adrian? Threatening her? Cassandra had gone nuclear. Posted on social media about how she'd married into a family that seemed perfect but was actually toxic. How her controlling father-in-law had isolated her husband, turned him against her, and was now trying to force them apart. How she feared for her safety because I was unstable and obsessed with money. The post had hundreds of shares. Comments from people who didn't know any of us, calling me a monster. Saying Adrian was brainwashed. Demanding Cassandra leave before something terrible happens. She's building a narrative, Marcus said when we met that afternoon. Classic move. Make herself the victim publicly so that when the legal battles start, she already has sympathy on her side. Can we sue her for defamation? We could. But that might backfire. Make it look like you're using your wealth to silence her. Better to stay quiet, let her expose herself. She's destroying my reputation. Your reputation with who? People who matter to you already know the truth. Random strangers on the internet? Their opinions don't affect your business or your life. He was right, but it still burned. 40 years of building a name, a legacy, a reputation for fair dealing and hard work. All of it being dragged through mud by a woman who'd been in my life for less than 2 years. Wednesday brought a new development. Cassandra filed a restraining order request against me. Claimed I'd threatened her, created a hostile environment, and that she feared for her physical safety. The hearing was scheduled for Friday. This is insane, I told Marcus. I haven't been within 50 yards of her since the basement incident. Doesn't matter. She just needs a judge to believe she's scared. If she gets the restraining order, she can argue you should be kept away from marital property, meaning your own house. Could complicate the separation significantly. Friday morning we walked into family court. Cassandra was there with a lawyer she'd somehow afforded despite having no income of her own. Probably working on contingency, betting on a big payout when everything was settled. She looked perfect. Conservative dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. The image of a frightened young woman being bullied by powerful men. Her lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client has been subjected to emotional abuse and intimidation by her father-in-law, Conrad Halstead. He has isolated her from her husband, made threats regarding her financial security, and created an environment where she genuinely fears for her safety. The judge, a woman in her 50s named Harriet Chin, looked skeptical. What specific threats were made? Cassandra's lawyer pulled out printed copies of text messages. He told my client, and I quote, "You're playing a game I've been winning for 40 years. You're not as clever as you think you are." Judge Chin read the messages. These don't sound like physical threats. They sound like a family argument about money. Your Honor, when a powerful man with substantial wealth tells a young woman he's been winning games for 40 years, the implicit threat is clear. He has the resources to destroy her. That's intimidation. Marcus stood. Your Honor, my client has not threatened Mrs. Halstead in any way. The text messages in question were sent after she hired multiple attorneys to explore ways to access his estate before his death. After she broke into a secured area of his home and photographed confidential documents. Mr. Halstead was simply informing her that her schemes would not succeed. She broke into his home? Judge Chin asked. She hired a locksmith to bypass a security door to his basement while he was out of town. This despite being repeatedly told that area was off limits. Cassandra's lawyer jumped in. She lives in that home, Your Honor. She's married to Mr. Halstead's son. She has every right to access all areas of her own residence. It's not her residence, Marcus countered. The home is owned solely by Conrad Halstead. His son and daughter-in-law were guests. Guests who violated clearly established boundaries. Judge Chin held up a hand. Let me ask Mrs. Halstead directly. Have you ever been physically threatened by your father-in-law? Cassandra dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Not physically, Your Honor. But the way he looks at me, the things he says, I know he wants me gone. And when someone with that much power wants you gone, you have to be afraid. Has he ever touched you inappropriately? Cornered you? Prevented you from leaving a room? No, but has he sent you threatening messages? Called you repeatedly? Shown up at places you frequent? No, Your Honor, but the emotional abuse. Mrs. Halstead, Judge Chin interrupted. Emotional abuse is a serious matter. But restraining orders are for situations where there's credible threat of physical harm. Based on what I'm hearing, this is a family dispute about money and property. Those issues should be handled in your separation proceedings, not through a restraining order. Cassandra's face shifted. The frightened victim disappeared, replaced for just a moment by cold fury. "He's turning my husband against me," she said, voice harder now. "Adrian won't even talk to me unless lawyers are present. We've been married less than a year, and his father has poisoned him completely." "That's also not grounds for a restraining order," Judge Chin said. "I'm denying this request. However, I'm ordering both parties to avoid contact except through attorneys while the separation is pending. Mr. Halstead, you will not initiate contact with your daughter-in-law. Mrs. Halstead, same applies to you. Do you both understand?" We both agreed. As we left the courtroom, I saw Cassandra whispering furiously with her lawyer. She looked up, caught my eye, and smiled. Not the fake sweet smile she'd used on Adrian. A real smile. The smile of someone who just realized they needed a different strategy. That worried me more than the fake restraining order had. "She's planning something," I told Marcus in the parking lot. "Of course she is. But she just lost in court. That hurts her victim narrative. She doesn't care about narrative anymore. She cares about money. And she's going to find another way to get it." I was right. Saturday morning, Adrian and I were having coffee when his phone buzzed. He looked at it, frowned, then showed me the screen. Email from Cassandra's lawyer. Subject line, pregnancy notification. My stomach dropped. Adrian opened it with shaking hands. The email was brief. Cassandra was 8 weeks pregnant. She wanted Adrian to know before proceeding with separation. She hoped this news would make him reconsider his decision to end their marriage. 8 weeks, Adrian said quietly. That's right after the business trip. Right after the basement incident. Could be true, I said carefully. Or could be strategy. You think she's lying about being pregnant? I think she's desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. She needs leverage, and a baby is the ultimate leverage. If she really is pregnant. He looked sick. Dad, I can't abandon my child. Even if I hate her, I can't walk away from my own kid. Nobody's asking you to. But we need verification. Doctor's confirmation, not just her word. She'll say I don't trust her. You don't trust her. And you shouldn't. Not after everything she's done. The email continued. Given Mrs. Halstead's condition and the stress of separation, she requests that Mr. Halstead provide temporary financial support during her pregnancy. $15,000 monthly for living expenses, medical care, and prenatal needs. $15,000? Marcus said when we called him. She's not asking for support. She's asking for a paycheck. But if she's really pregnant, Adrian said, don't I have to provide for her? Not $15,000 a month, you don't. We'll offer reasonable support, housing, medical coverage, basic living expenses. But we're not funding a luxury lifestyle. Over the next 2 weeks, Cassandra refused to provide medical documentation of the pregnancy. Said it was private information. Said Adrian should trust his wife. Said requesting proof showed how far I'd corrupted him. Meanwhile, Marcus's investigator delivered his report. Cassandra had a history. 2 previous relationships with wealthy older men. Both had ended with settlements after short-term relationships. One of those men filed police reports claiming she'd faked a pregnancy to extract money. She'd also been in contact with someone named Derek Sutton. Phone records showed dozens of calls over the past 3 months. Derek was her ex-boyfriend. The man she'd been with right before meeting Adrian. She's been talking to him the whole time, Adrian said, staring at the report. Through our engagement, our wedding, everything. Could be innocent, I offered, though I didn't believe it. Nothing about her is innocent. He looked up at me. What if the baby isn't even mine? What if it's his? Then we'll find out. But first, we need to confirm there's actually a baby. Adrian's lawyer sent an ultimatum. Provide medical documentation of pregnancy within 48 hours, or he would move forward with standard separation proceedings without acknowledging any pregnancy claims. Cassandra's response came in less than an hour. Fine. You want proof? You'll get it. And when you see that I'm carrying your child, your son or daughter, you'll realize what you've done. You'll realize you've chosen money over family. And you'll have to live with that for the rest of your life. The medical appointment was scheduled for Monday. Adrian insisted on being there. Said he needed to know the truth, whatever it was. Monday morning we met at the doctor's office. Cassandra arrived with her lawyer. Wouldn't look at Adrian. Wouldn't speak to him. The doctor came out, called them both back. Her lawyer started to follow, but the doctor stopped him. Family only for medical appointments. They disappeared through the doors. I sat in the waiting room watching the clock tick. 30 minutes. 45. When Adrian finally came out, his face was ashen. "Well?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, baby. She lied about everything. If someone faked a pregnancy to manipulate you, could you ever forgive them? Tell me in the comments what you would do." Adrian walked out of that doctor's office looking like someone had ripped his soul out through his chest. "She wasn't even apologetic," he said as we drove away. The doctor asked her directly, "Are you pregnant?" She said no. Just no. Like it was nothing. Like she hadn't just tried to trap me with a fake baby. I kept my hand steady on the wheel, but inside I was burning with rage. Not surprise, I'd expected something like this. But rage that she'd been willing to go that far. What did she say when you confronted her? That she'd been planning to get pregnant. That she'd thought she was pregnant because her period was late. That she was just giving me a heads up about what was coming. And her lawyer? Looked embarrassed. Actually apologized to me on the way out. Said he'd been misled about the situation. We drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Adrian spoke again, voice cracking. "I wanted to believe in her so badly, Dad. Even after everything, part of me kept thinking maybe you were wrong. Maybe she really did love me and just made mistakes. But you can't fake a pregnancy by accident. That's calculated. That's cold." "I know, son. How did you see through her so fast? What did I miss?" I thought about how to answer that. Experience. Babe. Years of watching people show you who they are when money's involved. Your mother and I struggled early in our marriage. We were poor, stressed, fighting about bills. But she never looked at me like I was an ATM machine. Never calculated my worth. When I started making real money, she didn't change. Didn't suddenly want expensive things or start demanding access to accounts. That's how I knew she loved me. And Cassandra? Changed the second she found out about the estate. I saw it in her eyes. Suddenly she was interested in family history, asking about properties, wanting to know details about my business. That's not love. That's an audit. Adrian laughed bitterly. "I'm an idiot." "You're not an idiot. You're human. You wanted love, and she saw that hunger and fed it to you like poison disguised as food." We got back to the guest house. Adrian went straight to his room, closed the door. I heard him crying through the walls. Let him cry. Sometimes a man needs to grieve the person he thought he'd married. That afternoon, Marcus called with news. The investigator dug deeper into Derek Sutton. Cassandra's ex. Turns out he's got an interesting background. Con artist. Done time for fraud. And get this, he specializes in romance scams. Finds wealthy marks, coaches girlfriends on how to extract money. My blood ran cold. You think he's been coaching Cassandra? Phone records show they talked for hours the day before she hired that locksmith. Hours the day before she filed the restraining order. And hours the day before she claimed to be pregnant. So none of this was impulse. It was all planned. Looks that way. We're building a case for fraud. Between the fake pregnancy, the attempted manipulation, the coordinated scheme with Sutton, we might be able to get criminal charges filed. Will that help Adrian's separation? It'll help him avoid paying her anything. Fraud voids prenuptial agreements, or in this case, the lack of one. She came into this marriage with nothing. She'll leave with nothing. Should have felt like victory. But mostly I just felt tired. That evening, Adrian emerged from his room. Eyes red but clearer. Stronger. "I want to know everything," he said. "Everything you've built, how you've protected it, why it matters. No more half measures. I want to understand this legacy completely. Because someday I'll have children, real children, with someone who deserves them, and I need to know how to protect them from people like her." So I told him. Everything. Told him about the offshore accounts I'd set up in the 90s when tax laws changed. About the family trust that couldn't be touched by creditors or ex-spouses. About the properties. Held in LLC names that didn't trace back to me directly. About the cash reserves hidden in places only Marcus and I knew about. The basement documents she photographed? I said. Outdated property records from the 80s. Contracts that expired years ago. Tax returns from before I restructured everything. I've been updating that bait regularly for a decade just in case someone ever got through the door. "You really do think like you're at war," Adrian said. "Because I am. Wealth doesn't make you safe. It paints a target on your back. You either protect yourself or you become a victim. Where's the real documentation?" I smiled. Safety deposit boxes in 3 different banks. Digital copies encrypted on servers in 2 countries. and hard copies in a location that only Marcus knows about. If something happens to me, he has instructions on how to get everything to you. And if something happens to both of you, then there's a third party who'll contact you. Someone you've never met, who knows nothing about our family except that they're supposed to deliver an envelope to Adrian Halstead if Conrad Halstead and Marcus Reynolds both die. He shook his head in amazement. That's paranoid genius. That's survival. You think I'm the first person to build wealth from nothing? Plenty of people have done it. But most of them lost it, to bad investments, to lawsuits, to family members who felt entitled, to spouses who saw dollar signs instead of human beings. I learned from their mistakes. We talked until midnight. I showed him the real financial statements, the actual asset lists, the true scope of what he'd inherit. It was more than he'd imagined. More than anyone would imagine. Jesus, Dad. I knew you were successful, but this is responsibility, I finished. Every dollar represents a choice, a sacrifice, a risk that could have failed. You don't inherit money. You inherit the obligation to protect it, to use it wisely, to make sure the next generation has the same opportunities. Did Mom know about all of this? Your mother knew everything. She helped me make some of the smartest decisions I ever made. When everyone said I was crazy to buy that timberland in Oregon, she said, trust your gut. When I wanted to invest everything in the tech boom in the late 90s, she said, diversify, don't get greedy. I miss her advice every single day. I miss her too, Adrian said quietly. I wish she were here now. She'd know what to say to make all of this make sense. She'd tell you what she told me the day we got married. Love is a choice you make every day. Choose people who choose you back. Everyone else is just borrowing your time. Cassandra never chose me. She chose what I represented. Now you know. And you'll never make that mistake again. Tuesday morning, Cassandra's lawyer sent new separation terms. She wanted $500,000 as a settlement. Said it was fair compensation for emotional damages and loss of expected lifestyle. Counteroffer, Marcus told her lawyer. $0. Your client committed fraud, attempted manipulation, and coordinated with a known con artist. She's lucky we're not filing criminal charges. The response came back in an hour. Then we'll see you in court. And we'll make sure everyone knows how Conrad Halstead destroys anyone who threatens his precious fortune. Let them try, I told Marcus. I've got 40 years of clean business records. Character witnesses. Documentation of everything. What she got? A fake pregnancy and a con artist boyfriend on speed dial? But that night something changed. I was working in the study when my phone rang. Unknown number. Again. This time it wasn't Cassandra. It was Derek Sutton. Mr. Halstead, smooth voice, too friendly. I think we should talk man to man. About this situation with Cassandra. I don't have anything to say to you. Maybe not. But I have something to say to you. See, Cassandra made mistakes. Got emotional, sloppy. But you and I? We're businessmen. We understand how deals work. This isn't a business deal. This is my family. Everything's a business deal if you look at it right. Here's what I'm proposing. You give Cassandra a reasonable settlement, say $250,000. She signs whatever you want, goes away quietly, never bothers your family again. And if I don't? Then things get complicated. See, I know things about your business operations. Things Cassandra noticed while she was living in your house. Little irregularities that might interest the IRS. Or state regulators. Or business partners who don't know the full picture. My hand tightened on the phone. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a solution. Pay a reasonable amount now or pay lawyers and investigators and PR firms when this gets ugly. Your choice. Here's my choice, I said, voice ice cold. You and Cassandra get nothing. And if you try to spread lies about my business, I'll bury you in lawsuits until you're working minimum wage at 60 just to pay off the judgments. Big talk from an old man. Not talk. Promise. I've been at war with people smarter and meaner than you for 4 decades. You're playing checkers. I'm playing chess. And I'm about to show you what checkmate looks like. I hung up. Immediately called Marcus. Derek Sutton just tried to blackmail me. Record everything. We're going after both of them. But even as I said it, a cold feeling settled in my gut. Derek was confident. Too confident. Which meant he had something. Something Cassandra had found that I didn't know about. And that scared me more than anything else that had happened so far. Have you ever been blackmailed or threatened by someone you trusted? How did you handle it? Share your experience below. The next 48 hours were a nightmare of uncertainty. Marcus had his investigator working overtime, trying to figure out what Derek might have on me. I went through every file, every document, every transaction from the past 10 years looking for something that could be twisted into scandal. Found nothing. My business was clean. Always had been. I'd seen too many people destroy themselves with shady deals and under-the-table payments. Stayed legal, paid my taxes, kept meticulous records. But Derek's confidence haunted me. Con artists don't bluff unless they have cards to play. Thursday afternoon the answer came. Not from Marcus's investigator. From Cassandra herself. She posted another social media manifesto. This time with photographs. Pictures she'd taken in my basement, yes, but not of the decoy documents. These were different. Personal photographs from my wife's memory box. Sarah and me at various ages. Our wedding. Her in the hospital during cancer treatment. Private moments that should never have been public. The post read, "This is the man who claims to care about family. Conrad Halstead, who keeps his dead wife's memory locked in a basement like a trophy. Who values photographs more than living people. Who chose money over his own son's happiness. Look at these images. This is what obsession looks like. This is what happens when grief turns into control." Comments poured in. Thousands of them. People calling me sick, disturbed, creepy. Saying I needed therapy. That Adrian should run from his psycho father. That I was clearly unstable and dangerous. She'd taken the most sacred thing I had, Sarah's memory, and weaponized it against me. Adrian found me in the study staring at the screen. Tears running down my face. Not from sadness. From rage so pure it had nowhere to go except out through my eyes. "Dad," he said softly. "Don't look at it. Don't read the comments. She posted pictures of your mother. Private pictures. Moments that were ours. How dare she? How dare she use Sarah like that? I know. It's sick. I'm going to destroy her." My voice didn't sound like mine. Too calm. Too cold. "Whatever it takes. Whatever I have to spend. I'm going to make sure she regrets the day she heard my name." Adrian put his hand on my shoulder. "That's what she wants. She's trying to provoke you into doing something stupid. Something that makes you look like the monster she's painting you as." He was right. Logically, I knew he was right. But logic doesn't help when someone defiles your dead wife's memory for social media likes. Marcus called minutes later. "Don't respond. Don't comment. Don't engage at all. She's committing multiple crimes here. Theft of personal property, violation of privacy, possibly defamation depending on what she claims in the posts. Let her keep digging her hole. I want her arrested. Working on it. But you need to stay calm. Play the long game." The long game. I'd been playing the long game for 40 years. But this wasn't business. This wasn't strategy. This was personal in a way nothing else had ever been. Friday Derek called again. "Saw Cassandra's post," he said cheerfully. "Really touched a nerve, huh? 50,000 shares so far. That's a lot of people who think you're unhinged. What do you want?" "Told you. 250,000. Cassandra signs the separation agreement, takes the money, disappears. You get your privacy back. Your reputation back. Your son back. Everyone wins. Except I'd be rewarding criminal behavior. You'd be solving a problem. Think of it as a business expense. What's $250,000 compared to what you're worth? Pocket change. And in return all this goes away. The posts, the photos, the drama. Clean slate." I took a deep breath. Considered it. Not because I wanted to pay them. But because I wanted this nightmare to end. Then I remembered Sarah. Remembered standing at her grave promising I'd never let anyone take advantage of our family. Remembered the years we'd fought together to build something meaningful. "No deal," I said. "Come at me with everything you've got. But know this, when I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never heard the name Halstead." Hung up again. This time I blocked the number. Saturday morning brought the breakthrough we needed. Marcus's investigator found Derek's records. Turned out he'd been running the scam for years. 5 different women, 5 different wealthy targets, always the same pattern. Romance, marriage or near marriage, fake crisis to extract money, then disappearance. He had warrants in 2 states. And one of his previous victims was willing to testify about the scheme. "We've got him," Marcus said. "And by extension we've got her. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. Both of them could face jail time." "Will they actually be prosecuted? With this evidence?" "Absolutely. I'm meeting with the district attorney Monday morning." Sunday Cassandra must have sensed the walls closing in. She showed up at the guest house. Pounded on the door until Adrian answered. I heard them from inside. Her voice desperate now, not cold. "Adrian, please. I made mistakes. But I love you. I really do love you. Can we talk? Just us. Without lawyers or your father or anyone else. There's nothing to talk about, Adrian said. His voice steady, strong. You lied about being pregnant. You stole from my father. You posted my mother's pictures online to hurt him. You've been working with a con artist the whole time. I know everything, Cassandra. It's over. I'll delete the posts. I'll apologize. I'll do whatever you want. Just give me another chance. Why? So you can figure out a new way to steal from us. I never stole anything. I just wanted what was fair. Fair? Adrian's voice rose. You wanted $500,000 for being married less than a year. You wanted access to money you didn't earn. You faked a pregnancy to trap me. What part of that is fair? You don't understand what it's like, she cried. Growing up poor. Watching rich people waste money on stupid things while you're struggling just to eat. I saw an opportunity to finally have security. Is that so wrong? Yes, Adrian said simply. It's wrong to lie. It's wrong to manipulate. It's wrong to hurt people who never did anything to you. My father was nothing but polite to you. And you treated his home like a mark. His memories like weapons. His son like a paycheck. Your father poisoned you against me. No, you did that yourself. I heard her collapse into crying. Real crying this time, not the fake tears she'd used before. The sound of someone who'd gambled everything and lost. Please, she whispered. I have nothing. No money, no job, nowhere to go. If you kick me out, I'll be homeless. You should have thought about that before you tried to rob us, Adrian said. Then softer, but I'm not cruel. You can stay in the main house for 2 more weeks. That gives you time to find somewhere else. After that, you need to be gone. 2 weeks? How am I supposed to? Figure it out. You're smart enough to plan elaborate cons. You're smart enough to find an apartment. He closed the door. Came back inside shaking. That was hard, he said. You did the right thing. Part of me wanted to help her. To give her money just so she'd leave and I'd never have to think about this again. That's because you're a good person. But good people can't fix bad people. They just get used by them. Monday morning, Marcus met with the DA. Presented all the evidence. Derek's history, the phone records, Cassandra's posts, the fake pregnancy, everything. The DA was interested. Very interested. This is slam dunk fraud. We'll file charges against both of them by end of week. What about the social media posts? I asked. Can we get those taken down? Once charges are filed, we can request they be removed as evidence in an ongoing investigation. Most platforms comply pretty quickly. Tuesday, something unexpected happened. Cassandra's lawyer called Marcus. My client wants to settle. No money. She'll sign whatever you want. Just wants immunity from prosecution. We discussed it. Part of me wanted to see her face charges. Wanted her to understand there are consequences for treating people like marks. But another part just wanted her gone. Erased from our lives like a bad dream. What do you think? I asked Adrian. I want it over, he said. I don't want to spend the next year in court testimony and hearings. I want to forget she ever existed. Even if that means she doesn't face consequences? She lost me. Lost the life she thought she'd have. That's consequence enough. So we agreed. Cassandra would sign a comprehensive separation agreement. No money. No assets. No claim to anything current or future. In return, we wouldn't pursue criminal charges. Derek was on his own. His warrants would catch up to him eventually without our help. Thursday, we met at Marcus's office for the signing. Cassandra looked different. Smaller somehow. No makeup, cheap clothes, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The glamorous woman who'd swept into Adrian's life had disappeared. She signed every page without reading them. Didn't argue, didn't negotiate, just signed. When she finished, she looked at Adrian. I really did love you. At first. Before I knew about the money. That first night we met, I thought you were just a nice guy. I fell for you before I knew who your father was. Don't, Adrian said. Don't try to rewrite history. I'm not. I'm telling you the truth. I loved you until I started loving the idea of security more. And I'm sorry. For what that's worth. It's not worth anything, Adrian said quietly. Words are easy. Actions are what matter. And your actions showed me exactly who you are. She nodded. Stood up. Walked to the door. Turned back one last time. I hope you find someone worthy of you, she said. Someone who sees you instead of just seeing your last name. Then she was gone. Out of the office. Out of Adrian's life. Out of our family forever. We sat in silence for a moment. It's really over, Adrian finally said. It's really over. Why don't I feel relieved? Because endings are sad even when they're necessary. You lost something, not Cassandra the person she actually was, but the idea of who you thought she was. That's worth grieving. We drove home in silence. But it was comfortable silence. The silence of people who survived battle together. That night, Adrian made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and sauce from a jar. But we sat at the table like family. Really sat, really talked, no phones or distractions. Tell me about Mom, he said. Not the cancer stuff. Before that. When you were happy. So I did. Told him stories I hadn't shared in years. How Sarah had hated my first car, called it an eyesore on wheels. How she'd made me donate half my wardrobe to charity because I dressed like a dad from a 1970s sitcom. How we'd fought about stupid things and made up by cooking elaborate dinners neither of us knew how to make. She sounds amazing, Adrian said. She was. Kept me grounded when success went to my head. Reminded me that money was just a tool, not a purpose. If she were here now, she'd have seen through Cassandra in about 5 seconds. Think she'd be disappointed in me? For falling for someone like that? I thought about it. Really thought. No. I think she'd be proud that you figured it out. That you chose truth over comfort. That you're stronger now than you were before. I don't feel stronger. I feel like an idiot who wasted a year of his life. You're stronger precisely because you feel that way. Strength isn't never falling down. It's getting back up after you fall and being smarter next time. He smiled. Small but genuine. When did you get so wise? About 40 years of expensive mistakes ago. We cleaned up together. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I had my son back. Really back. Not just physically present but emotionally connected. The way we'd been before Sarah died. Before distance and grief built walls between us. But even as I felt that peace settling in, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. Cassandra was gone. Derek would be arrested eventually. The immediate crisis was over. But the damage to my public reputation remained. The social media posts were still out there, still being shared, still painting me as a disturbed old man who valued objects over people. And in the shadows, someone else had been watching this entire drama unfold. Someone who saw opportunity in my moment of weakness. When someone wrongs you, do you believe in legal justice or letting karma handle it? Tell me what you think. 3 weeks passed. Quiet weeks. Adrian and I fell into a routine. Mornings, we'd work through business lessons. He was learning fast, asking smart questions, starting to see the connections between different investments. Afternoons, he'd handle some of the smaller property management tasks, getting his hands dirty with the actual work of maintaining an estate. Evenings, we'd cook dinner together and talk. About Sarah. About his childhood. About the future. About the kind of man he wanted to become. The social media storm started dying down. People moved on to the next scandal. Cassandra's posts were still there, but buried under newer content. My reputation took a hit among strangers who didn't know me, but the people who mattered, business partners, longtime friends, knew the truth. Life was almost peaceful. Then Marcus called with news that shattered that peace. We've got a problem. A big one. My stomach dropped. Derek. No. Derek's been arrested in Nevada on outstanding warrants. He's done. This is something else. Someone's been buying up shares in Halstead Properties. Halstead Properties was one of my major holdings, a real estate development company I'd founded 20 years ago. It was structured as a private corporation, but I'd sold minority shares to investors over the years to fund expansion. I owned 60%. The rest was scattered among small investors. How many shares? I asked. Enough to worry about. Someone's been quietly purchasing from existing shareholders. Paying premium prices. They're up to 28% now. Who? That's the interesting part. It's being done through a shell company registered in Delaware. Very carefully structured to hide the actual buyer. But my investigator did some digging. Found a connection to a name you might recognize. Who? Richard Carlisle. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Richard Carlisle. My former business partner from 30 years ago. The man I'd forced out of our timber company when I discovered he was embezzling. Carlisle's been in prison, I said. Was in prison. Got out 6 months ago. And apparently spent his time inside planning his revenge. My mind raced. If Carlisle controlled 28% of Halstead Properties, and he could convince just 13% more to vote with him, he could force changes to the board. Could push me out of my own company. Could dismantle everything I'd built. Can we stop the share purchases? Not legally. They're private transactions between willing sellers. Unless we can prove some kind of fraud or manipulation, he's within his rights to buy stock. What about going public with who's buying? Warning the other shareholders? We could try. But Carlyle's smart. He's offering 20% over market value. Most of these are small investors who don't care about company politics. They just see easy profit. I sat down heavily. 30 years ago, I'd caught Richard Carlyle stealing from our company. Not a little, hundreds of thousands over several years. I'd given him a choice: resign quietly and repay what he'd stolen, or I'd press charges and see him in prison. He'd chosen to fight. Claimed I was lying, that the missing money was accounting errors. But I had proof. Ironclad documentation. He went to prison for 12 years. And apparently spent every day of those 12 years planning how to hurt me back. There's more, Marcus said. Carlyle's been in contact with some of your other business partners. Asking questions. Suggesting you're getting old, losing your edge, making poor decisions. He's trying to undermine confidence in your leadership. Has anyone listened? Not yet. But Conrad, you're 63. Some of these partners have been wondering about succession planning. About what happens when you're gone. Carlyle's exploiting that uncertainty. Adrian had been listening to my side of the conversation. What's happening? I explained. Watched his face shift from confusion to understanding to anger. This is because of Cassandra, he said. Her social media posts made you look unstable. Carlyle saw that weakness and attacked. He was right. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Cassandra's campaign to destroy my reputation had created an opening, and Richard Carlyle had walked right through it. What do we do? Adrian asked. We fight back, I said. Just like we always do. Over the next 2 weeks, I reached out to every shareholder in Halstead Properties personally. Reminded them of the company's history, its growth, its future potential. Explained that hostile takeovers rarely benefit small investors. They benefit the person taking over. Some listened. Some didn't. By the end of week 2, Carlyle was up to 34%. Then he made his move. Called a special shareholders meeting. Put forward a vote of no confidence in my leadership. If it passed, I'd be removed as CEO of my own company. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Marcus and I prepared carefully. Gathered financial reports showing the company's success. Testimonials from partners. Documentation of every major decision I'd made and why it had been the right call. Thursday came. The meeting was held in a hotel conference room, neutral territory. About 40 people showed up. Shareholders, board members, some investors I hadn't seen in years. And Richard Carlyle. Older now, gray hair, lines around his eyes. But the same cold smile I remembered from 30 years ago. Conrad, he said, extending his hand. It's been a long time. I didn't shake it. Not long enough. Still holding grudges? That's the problem right there. You're stuck in the past. Can't let go. Can't move forward. That's why this company needs new leadership. The meeting started. Carlyle presented his case first. Made it sound reasonable. Said I'd done great things for the company, but it was time for fresh vision. That I was too conservative, too risk-averse, too focused on protecting the past instead of building the future. Then he played his trump card. Pulled up Cassandra's social media posts on the projector screen. The photographs of Sarah. The comments calling me disturbed and unstable. This is your CEO, Carlyle said. A man who keeps his dead wife's belongings in a locked basement like a shrine. Who drives his own son away rather than share information. Who values control over collaboration. Is this really who you want leading Halstead Properties into the future? Murmurs around the room. I saw some people nodding. Others looking uncomfortable. My turn to speak. I stood up, walked to the front of the room. Didn't use notes. Just spoke from the heart. Richard's right about one thing, I started. I am protective. I do value control. Because I built this company from nothing, and I've seen what happens when control falls into the wrong hands. I looked directly at Carlyle. 30 years ago, this man embezzled from a company we built together. Stole money that should have gone to employees, to growth, to investors. When I caught him, he didn't apologize. He lied. Fought. Tried to destroy evidence. The court sent him to prison because he was guilty. Not because I was vindictive. Because he was a thief. That was 30 years ago, Carlyle interrupted. I paid my debt to society. People deserve second chances. They do, I agreed. But second chances don't mean you get to destroy the person who held you accountable. You're not here because you think you can run this company better. You're here for revenge. And you're using lies and manipulated social media posts to get it. I turned to the room. Those posts Richard showed you? They were made by my son's estranged wife. A woman who broke into my home, stole private photographs and posted them online to hurt me. She's currently being investigated for fraud. The posts are being removed by platforms as we speak. Using them as evidence of my instability is like judging someone based on lies their enemy told. The court of public opinion, Carlyle started. Doesn't run this company, I cut him off. Results run this company. Let's look at results. I pulled up financial charts. Showed how Halstead Properties had grown 15% annually for the past decade. How employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. How we'd never missed a dividend payment to shareholders. How property values in our portfolio had doubled. This is what stability looks like, I said. This is what experience delivers. You want to replace that with a convicted felon who's offering you empty promises of fresh vision? Be my guest. But know what you're trading away. The room was silent. I sat down. Carlyle stood again. Conrad talks about results. But he's hiding something. He's not telling you about succession planning. What happens when he dies? Who takes over? He has no plan. No heir apparent. This company's future depends entirely on one 63-year-old man. That's not stability. That's vulnerability. He had a point. I'd been so focused on protecting the company that I hadn't publicly addressed what came next. That's when Adrian stood up. I hadn't expected it. Hadn't planned it. My name is Adrian Halstead, he said. Conrad's son. And I'd like to address Mr. Carlyle's concerns about succession. The room turned to look at him. He walked to the front, stood beside me. 3 months ago, I didn't know anything about my father's business. I'd spent my life avoiding it actually. Thought it was boring. Thought I wanted something different. But recent events, including my failed marriage to the woman whose post you just saw, taught me something important. He looked at me, then back at the room. Legacy isn't given. It's earned. My father has spent the past 2 months teaching me everything he knows. Not because he's grooming me to take over tomorrow, but because he's making sure that when the time comes, whether that's 5 years from now or 20, this company will be in capable hands. Pretty speech, Carlyle said. But words don't mean. I'm not finished, Adrian interrupted. You want to talk about my father's character? Let me tell you what I know. He caught you stealing and gave you a choice, resign or face prosecution. You chose to fight and lost. That's not his fault. That's yours. Now you're back, trying to paint him as unstable because you saw some fake social media posts and thought you had an opening. Adrian's voice got harder. But here's what you didn't count on. Those posts were made by someone trying to hurt him. Someone who failed. Someone who's gone now. And the people who actually know Conrad Halstead, the employees, the partners, the investors who've worked with him for decades, they know the truth. You can't destroy a man's reputation by showing lies to people who already know he's honest. Carlyle's smile faded. So here's my message to everyone in this room, Adrian continued. Vote however you want. But know this, if you vote my father out, you're not getting fresh leadership. You're getting revenge. Revenge from a man who can't let go of being held accountable for his crimes. Is that really what's best for this company? He sat down. The room erupted in whispered conversations. The vote was called. Secret ballot. Everyone wrote their choice on paper, confidence or no confidence in Conrad Halstead's leadership. Marcus collected the votes, counted them slowly. My heart hammered in my chest. Finally he looked up. The vote is 32 confidence, 8 no confidence. Conrad Halstead retains leadership of Halstead Properties. Relief washed over me. Adrian grabbed my hand, squeezed it. Carlyle stood up, face red with anger. This isn't over. I still own 34%. I'll keep fighting. No, I said calmly. You won't. Because I'm offering to buy your shares at 15% over what you paid. You'll make a profit and walk away. Or you can keep fighting, and I'll make it my personal mission to expose every backdoor deal you've made, every shareholder you've misled, every SEC regulation you've skirted while accumulating those shares. Your choice. Carlyle stared at me, calculating, weighing his options. 20% over, he finally said. 15. And you sign a non-compete agreement that keeps you from ever targeting my companies again. He looked around the room, saw the faces staring back at him. No sympathy, no support. Just people who'd voted to keep me and wanted this drama to end. Fine, he spat. Draw up the papers. 3 days later, Richard Carlyle signed away his shares and disappeared from my life for the second and final time. Cost me $8 million to buy him out, but it was worth every penny. That night, Adrian and I sat on the porch of the guest house. Stars overhead, crickets chirping, air cooling down from the day's heat. "You saved me today," I said. That speech. I don't know if I would have won without it. "You would have," Adrian said. "But maybe it helped. Showed people you have succession planning in place." "Do I? Are you really interested in taking over someday, or were you just saying that to help me?" He thought about it. "Honestly, I don't know yet, but I want to learn. Want to understand what you built. And if it turns out I'm meant to carry it forward, then I will. If not, we'll figure out something else. But either way, I'm not running from it anymore. That's all I can ask." We sat in comfortable silence. Then Adrian spoke again. "You know what the hardest part of the past few months has been? Not Cassandra's betrayal. Not the legal fights or the social media attacks. The hardest part was realizing how much distance had grown between us. How many years we wasted not really knowing each other." "That's on me," I said. "After your mother died, I retreated. Into work, into myself. Left you to figure out life alone." We both retreated. But we're not anymore. That's what matters. He was right. The past few months had been hell. Betrayal, manipulation, attacks on everything I'd built. But they'd also given me back my son. Really given him back, not just physically present but emotionally connected. "Your mother would be proud of you," I said quietly. "Of the man you're becoming. Of how you stood up today. Think she'd be proud of you too? For teaching me instead of just protecting me?" "I hope so." We stayed there until midnight, talking about nothing and everything. About plans for the future, lessons from the past, hopes that felt possible now in ways they hadn't before. And for the first time in 8 years, since Sarah died, I felt something close to peace. But peace never lasts forever. Because the next morning, I received a letter that would change everything one final time. An envelope with no return address. Inside, a single document. And when I read it, I understood that the real test wasn't over yet. Have you ever had to fight to protect something you built? What gave you the strength to keep going? Share your story. The document was a legal notice. Medical records released from Cedar Hills Hospital dated 6 weeks ago. Patient name, Cassandra Halstead. Diagnosis, acute appendicitis requiring emergency surgery. And below that, in smaller text, patient presented as 8 weeks pregnant at time of admission. Ultrasound performed. Fetus confirmed viable. My hands started shaking. She'd been pregnant. Actually pregnant. Not the lie she told us at the doctor's office, but real. And she'd had emergency surgery while carrying Adrian's child. I looked at the date again. 6 weeks ago. Right around the time we'd met at the doctor's office where she'd denied being pregnant. But why would she lie if she actually was? Adrian walked into the kitchen, saw my face. "What's wrong?" I handed him the document. Watched the color drain from his skin as he read. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "She told the doctor she wasn't pregnant. Right in front of me. We were there together. Maybe she lost it," I said carefully. "Maybe the surgery complications." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't it. The medical records showed fetus confirmed viable. After the surgery. "Who sent this?" Adrian asked. "No return address. Just appeared in the mail." He flipped the envelope over, searching for clues. Found nothing. "This is another manipulation. Has to be. She's trying to drag us back in. Or someone else is trying to tell us something." We sat in silence, both thinking the same question. If Cassandra was pregnant when she had the surgery 6 weeks ago, where was she now? Was the baby okay? And why had she lied about it? Marcus arrived within the hour. Examined the documents carefully. "These look legitimate," he said. "I can verify with the hospital, but medical records are hard to fake. If someone's going to forge something, this wouldn't be it." "So she was pregnant," Adrian said. "But lied and said she wasn't. Why?" "Maybe she thought if you knew, you'd feel obligated to stay with her," I suggested. "Maybe she wanted you to choose her without guilt or responsibility clouding your judgment." "That's actually kind of noble," Adrian said slowly. "In a twisted way." "Or," Marcus countered, "maybe she planned to use the pregnancy later. As leverage if the separation didn't go her way. Keep it as a card to play when she needed it most." We all knew Marcus was probably right. Cassandra had shown herself to be calculating, strategic. Every move planned. Why would this be different? "We need to find her," Adrian said. "Need to know if the baby's okay. If she's okay." "Why do you care?" I asked. "After everything she did? Because if that baby is mine, it's also your grandchild. And neither of us abandons family." He was right. As much as I hated Cassandra, as much as I wanted her erased from our lives, a child was different. An innocent child was different. Marcus made some calls. Found out Cassandra had been discharged from Cedar Hills 2 days after the surgery. No forwarding address on file. No contact information except a disconnected cell phone. She'd vanished. Why send us the records if she's trying to disappear? Adrian wondered. Maybe she didn't send them, I said. Maybe someone else did. Someone who thinks we should know. But who? Derek was in jail. Cassandra's lawyer had dropped her as a client after the separation was finalized. Who else would care enough to inform us? The answer came that afternoon. Another envelope. This time with a name written on the back, Rebecca Walsh. Inside was a handwritten letter. Mr. Halstead and Adrian, my name is Rebecca Walsh. I'm Cassandra's older sister. We haven't spoken in 5 years because of choices she made, but I recently learned about her situation and felt you should know the truth. Cassandra was pregnant when she met with you at the doctor's office. She lied because she was ashamed. Ashamed that she tried to trap Adrian with a fake pregnancy, then gotten actually pregnant right after. She thought if you knew, you'd think she was manipulating you again. After her surgery, she lost the baby. Miscarriage at 11 weeks. She's been staying with me, recovering physically but broken emotionally. I'm not writing to ask for money or sympathy. Just to let you know that sometimes people who do terrible things are still human beings who suffer. If you want to contact her, I've included her number. If you don't, I understand. Rebecca. Adrian read the letter 3 times. Set it down with shaking hands. She lost the baby, he said quietly. My baby. I'm sorry, son. I'm not, he said, then immediately looked horrified at his own words. God, that's awful. I'm a terrible person for thinking that. You're not terrible, I said gently. You're relieved. That's human. Doesn't mean you wanted a child to die. Just means you're relieved you don't have to be tied to Cassandra forever. But what if she's suffering? What if she's actually changed? What if losing the baby made her realize? Don't, I interrupted. Don't romanticize her pain into redemption. She didn't change when she got caught lying. She didn't change when she lost you. One tragedy doesn't transform a person's character. But shouldn't I at least call? Make sure she's okay? I looked at my son. Saw the battle happening behind his eyes. The good person warring with the person who'd been burned. That's your choice, I said. But think carefully about why you want to call. If it's guilt, don't. You didn't cause her miscarriage. If it's hope that she's somehow different now, don't. People rarely change that fundamentally. But if it's closure, if you need to hear her voice one more time to truly be done, then maybe. He picked up the phone number Rebecca had included, stared at it, then put it down. No, he said. I don't need closure. I need to move forward. She made her choices. I made mine. And a miscarriage, as sad as it is, doesn't change any of that. I felt relief wash through me. He'd learned. Really learned. Not just about protecting assets or reading contracts, but about protecting himself. About knowing when compassion becomes self-destruction. What about Rebecca? Adrian asked. Should we respond to her? Send her a card, I suggested. Something simple. Thank you for informing us. We're sorry for Cassandra's loss. We wish her the best in her recovery. Polite but distant. Adrian nodded. That feels right. We drafted the message together. Send it that afternoon. Then returned to our routine of business lessons and property management and slowly rebuilding the relationship that had been fractured for so many years. 2 weeks passed. No response from Rebecca. No contact from Cassandra. Life continued forward. Then one morning I found something in my mailbox that stopped me cold. An envelope addressed to Conrad Halstead, personal and confidential. Inside was a check for $250,000. Made out from Cassandra Martinez, her maiden name. With it, a note in her handwriting. Mr. Halstead, this is the amount I tried to extort from you through Derek's schemes and my manipulations. I'm repaying it even though you never gave it to me because the debt exists anyway. The money came from my grandmother's estate. She passed 2 weeks ago and left me her house. I sold it. This is everything after taxes and fees. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect contact. I just need you to know that I understand what I did was wrong. That I let greed and fear turn me into someone I'm ashamed of. That I destroyed something real, Adrian's love, chasing something fake. I lost my baby. I lost your son. I lost any chance at the life I thought I wanted. But maybe I can pay back what I owe and start learning how to be a decent person. Or at least stop being a terrible one. Thank you for protecting Adrian from me. You were right about everything. Cassandra. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the check. $250,000. The exact amount Derek had tried to blackmail me for. The amount she'd later asked for in settlement. She was paying a debt that legally didn't exist. Making restitution for damage that couldn't be undone. Adrian came in, saw the check, read the note. She's trying to buy forgiveness, he said. Maybe. Or maybe she's trying to buy peace with herself. Do we cash it? I thought about it. Really thought. We cash it and donate it. To a charity for women escaping abusive relationships. Or one that helps people recovering from addiction. Something that turns her guilt into good. She'll never know if we do that. She doesn't need to know. This isn't about her anymore. It's about us. About choosing who we want to be. Adrian smiled. Small but genuine. Mom would have liked that. Turning pain into purpose. She would have. We cashed the check the next day. Donated the full amount to a women's shelter that helped victims of financial abuse. Included a note that it was given in memory of Sarah Halstead, who'd always believed in second chances. Not second chances for the abusers, but second chances for their victims to rebuild. And just like that, the Cassandra chapter closed. Not with drama or revenge or legal battles, but with a quiet transaction that transformed poison into something useful. Life moved forward. Adrian continued learning the business. Showed real aptitude for property management and investment strategy. Started contributing ideas, not just following instructions. 6 months after the check arrived, he moved out of the guest house. Not back to the main house, he got his own place in the city. Small apartment, nothing fancy. Said he needed to prove to himself he could build something independent of my wealth. I was proud of that. Proud he wanted to earn his own way before accepting inheritance. But we stayed close. Dinner every Sunday. Phone calls throughout the week. Business meetings where he asked questions that made me think harder about decisions I'd been making on autopilot for years. He started dating again. Carefully this time. Slowly. Brought a woman to Sunday dinner after they'd been seeing each other for 3 months. She was a teacher, practical and warm, with no idea who I was or what I was worth. She talked about her students, asked Adrian about his work, treated me like a regular person instead of a cash machine. I like her, I told Adrian after she left. Yeah, he said, smiling. Me too. 1 year after the separation was finalized, Adrian filed for divorce. Cassandra didn't contest it. Signed everything within a week. The marriage was dissolved as if it had never existed. Except it had existed. And it had taught us both lessons we'd needed to learn. I'd learned that protecting your legacy sometimes means letting people make their own mistakes. That you can't shield someone from consequences without making them weak. That love without boundaries becomes enabling. Adrian had learned that not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions. That wealth attracts predators. That family, real family, is built on loyalty and honesty, not blood or legal documents. Together, we'd learned that betrayal doesn't have to destroy you. Sometimes it rebuilds you into something stronger. The basement door stayed locked. But now Adrian knew why. Not because I was controlling or paranoid, but because some things are sacred. Some memories deserve protection. Some boundaries exist not to keep people out, but to keep what matters safe. And on quiet evenings when I'd go down there to read Sarah's letters or look at old photographs, I'd whisper to her memory, "We made it through. Our boy is going to be okay. You'd be proud of him. I hope I made you proud too." But even as peace settled over our lives, even as Adrian grew into the man I'd always hoped he'd become, I knew better than to think the story was completely over. Because wealth doesn't just attract one generation of predators. It attracts them continuously, endlessly, like moths to flame. The question wasn't whether another Cassandra would eventually appear. The question was whether Adrian would recognize her when she did. Would you give someone who wronged you a second chance if they truly tried to make amends? Let me know in the comments. 2 years passed. Adrian proposed to Jennifer, the teacher he'd brought to Sunday dinner. They planned a small wedding, nothing extravagant. Just family and close friends. The kind of wedding that happens when two people actually love each other instead of performing for an audience. The night before the ceremony, Adrian and I sat in my study. The same room where I'd caught Cassandra snooping years ago. But tonight it felt different. Peaceful. Safe. Nervous? I asked. Terrified, he admitted. But in a good way. Like standing at the edge of something important. That's how I felt before I married your mother. Like my life was about to split into before and after, and I couldn't wait for after to start. How do you know it's real this time? After Cassandra, how do I trust my own judgment? I'd been expecting this question. You don't trust blindly. You trust based on evidence. Jennifer has seen you at your worst. She's met you when you had nothing to prove and nothing to offer except yourself. She chose you anyway. That's different from Cassandra, who chose the idea of you. The inheritance. The lifestyle. What if I'm wrong again? Then you survive it. Like you survived before. But son, some risks are worth taking. Love is one of them. Just go in with your eyes open. Set boundaries. Protect what matters. And choose someone who respects those boundaries. He smiled. Jennifer thinks you're wise. Said her dad gives terrible advice, but you actually make sense. I've made enough mistakes to learn from them. That's not wisdom. That's expensive education. The wedding the next day was perfect. Simple ceremony in a garden. Jennifer wore a dress she bought off the rack. Adrian wore the suit I'd given him for his 21st birthday. They wrote their own vows, promises about partnership and honesty and choosing each other every day. I cried. First time I'd cried in public since Sarah's funeral. But these were good tears. Healing tears. The tears of a father watching his son find something real. At the reception, Jennifer's father cornered me. I hear you're quite the businessman. Built an empire from nothing. I worked hard, I said simply. Adrian talks about you with real respect. Says you taught him everything that matters. That's rare these days. Most kids can't wait to get away from their parents. We had some rough years, I admitted. But we figured it out. Must be nice having him set up. Knowing he'll inherit everything you built. And there it was. The casual question that wasn't casual at all. The fishing expedition to find out what Adrian was worth. Adrian's building his own life, I said carefully. What he inherits someday is between him and me. Jennifer's father looked disappointed but didn't push. Good. He'd learned quickly that this family didn't discuss money with outsiders. 3 months after the wedding, Adrian and Jennifer bought a house. Small place in a decent neighborhood. They insisted on using their own savings. Adrian's salary from the property management position he'd taken with my company, Jennifer's teacher income. Refused when I offered to help with the down payment. We need to do this ourselves, Adrian explained. Need to know we can build something without your money cushioning every fall. I understood. Respected it. But still secretly put $50,000 in an account with both their names on it. Emergency fund they didn't know existed. Just in case. Because that's what fathers do. We protect even when we've been told not to. Life settled into comfortable routine. Adrian thrived at work. Jennifer got promoted to head of her department. They talked about having kids someday. Real kids this time, planned and wanted and loved. And I started working less. Delegating more. Training Adrian not just to manage my empire but to think like someone who could run it. Teaching him the lessons that had taken me 40 years to learn. The basement stayed locked. But now Adrian had the code. Had access to everything if something happened to me. Trusted him completely. Not because blood demanded it. Because he'd earned it. One evening, 5 years after Cassandra had disappeared from our lives, I got a Facebook message from an account I didn't recognize. Opened it out of curiosity. It was from Rebecca, Cassandra's sister. Mr. Halstead, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted you to know that Cassandra passed away last month. Cancer. Moved fast. She spent her last year working at a women's shelter. The same one that received your donation actually. She never knew it came from you. She died helping others escape the kind of situations she'd once created. Thought you should know. She wasn't the woman you knew at the end. Doesn't excuse what she did. But maybe it counts for something. Rebecca. I stared at that message for a long time. Cassandra was dead. The woman who'd tried to destroy my family, who'd manipulated my son, who'd violated my wife's memory, gone. Spent her last year trying to make amends through action instead of words. Did it count for something? I honestly didn't know. I forwarded the message to Adrian. He called within minutes. How do you feel? He asked. I don't know. Sad maybe. Not for who she was. For who she could have been if she'd made different choices. Should we send flowers? Go to the funeral? No. We mourned that relationship years ago. This doesn't change anything. Yeah, he agreed. But still. It's strange knowing she's gone. Like a chapter one thought was finished is really finished now. Some chapters close slowly. This one took longer than most. We talked for a while longer. Then hung up and went back to our lives. Because that's what you do. You acknowledge the past but don't let it anchor you there. Cassandra's death didn't change my daily routine. Didn't affect my business or my relationships or the slow, steady transfer of knowledge to Adrian. It was just one more reminder that life moves forward. That people make choices and live with consequences. That sometimes redemption comes too late to repair the damage. 7 years after the basement incident, I turned 70. Adrian threw me a surprise party. Small gathering of real friends, business partners I'd worked with for decades, Jennifer and their 2 kids. My grandchildren, a boy and a girl who looked nothing like Cassandra and everything like Hope. Marcus gave a toast to Conrad Halstead, who taught me that protecting what you build isn't greed, it's responsibility. Who showed me that boundaries aren't walls, they're foundations. And who proved that family isn't about blood, it's about loyalty. Everyone raised their glasses. I looked around the room at faces I trusted. At Adrian, now 35 and confident in ways he'd never been before. At Jennifer, who'd become the daughter I'd never had. At my grandchildren, who'd never know poverty or betrayal or the desperate hunger that had driven my entire life. This was legacy. Not the money or the properties or the businesses, but the people, the relationships, the lessons passed down, the wisdom earned through pain. After the party, Adrian and I stood on my porch. Same porch where we'd sat years ago processing Cassandra's betrayal. But tonight felt different. Complete. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For teaching me even when I didn't want to learn. For protecting me even when it pushed me away. For being the kind of father who builds men instead of just raising boys. You did the work, son. I just showed you what was possible. Still, thank you." We stood in comfortable silence. Then Adrian asked the question I'd been expecting for years. "When are you going to retire? Hand over the reins completely?" "When you're ready to take them. Really ready. Not just capable, ready?" "I think I'm close. Jennifer and I talked about it. We'd need to move closer so I could be here daily. Would need to set up systems for managing everything. But I think I could do it." "I know you could. Question is, do you want to?" He thought about it. Really thought. "Yeah, I do. Not because it's expected. Not because it's mine by default. But because I understand now what you built and why. And I want to protect it. Want to pass it to my kids the way you're passing it to me. Want to be the kind of guardian Sarah would have been proud of." My throat tightened. She would be proud. Of you. Of the man you became. Of how you learned to see through lies and value truth. Learned from the best. We shook hands. Then hugged. And in that moment, I felt something I'd been chasing since Sarah died. Peace. Real peace. Not the absence of problems but the presence of purpose fulfilled. The basement door stayed locked. But now Adrian's children asked about it. "What's down there, Grandpa?" they'd wonder. "Memories," I'd tell them. "Stories from before you were born. Someday when you're older, I'll take you down and show you. Teach you why some things deserve protection." They'd nod, satisfied with mystery for now. Just like Adrian had been at their age. And late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd sometimes go down to that basement alone. Sit among Sarah's letters and old photographs. Touch her wedding dress. Remember the woman who'd stood beside me through everything. "We did it," I'd whisper. "Raised a good man. Protected what we built. Turned pain into wisdom. Our legacy isn't money. It's Adrian. And his children. And the lessons they'll carry forward long after we're both gone." The documents Cassandra had photographed years ago were still there. Decoys I'd never bothered to remove. Reminders that threats come from expected places. That trust must be earned. That sometimes the people closest to you carry the sharpest knives. But alongside those old documents now sat new ones. Photos of Adrian's wedding. Birth certificates for my grandchildren. Letters from Jennifer thanking me for welcoming her into the family. Proof that after betrayal comes rebuilding. That after pain comes growth. That after the storm, if you survive, comes sunshine. I'd spent 40 years building an empire. But the last 7 years had taught me what truly mattered. Not the properties or the investments or the wealth I'd accumulated. But the relationships. The trust earned back. The son who'd learned to protect what matters. The family that had survived betrayal and emerged stronger. That was the real treasure in the basement. Not documents or deeds or legal protections. But the understanding that legacy lives in people, not paperwork. That wealth means nothing if you have no one worthy to pass it to. That the best thing you can build isn't an empire, it's a family that knows how to sustain it. My name is Conrad Halstead. I'm 70 years old. And if there's one thing life has taught me, it's this. The people you trust most can carry the sharpest knives. But the people you teach to be trustworthy? They carry your legacy forward long after you're gone. And that, in the end, is worth more than all the gold and all the basements in all the world. Thank you for joining me on Conrad's journey. If this story moved you, inspired you, or taught you something about trust, betrayal, and family, Please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story like this one. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to protect your legacy from someone you trusted? How did you handle it? Your story might inspire someone else who's facing similar challenges. And remember, the best way to honor the lessons in this story is to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, protect what matters, trust carefully, and build legacies worth leaving behind.